Vegeta, what did you say his power level is? It's over 9,000! 9,000?! There's no way that can be right!
Hello, fellow basement dwellers, and in today's video, I will be talking about the 5 most powerful primarchs. Now, when I mean powerful, I'm not meaning who's the best at combat, because I'm not going to spoil my list, obviously, but there are some characters who are not that powerful who could body most of the people on this list. So, power, I'm not just going off of speed, brute strength, I'm going off of kind of everything put together on who's the most powerful in general. The 5th most powerful primarch is actually Angwan. Now, Angwan is actually supposed to be higher on this list, but because of the Butcher's Nails, we never got to see his true potential. So going based off of feats, I'm going to have to put him at 5th, but if it wasn't for the Butcher's Nails, I can guarantee he would be higher. Now, for those of you who don't know, Angwan landed on a planet called New Syria, and he was immediately, little baby Angwan was attacked by an entire Eldar kill team, and he killed every single one of them. But he was so wounded and tired that the slavers of New Syria were able to capture him and force him in the gladiatorial pits. Now, I'm not going to get into his whole backstory because we don't want to be here all day. Some of his feats include lifting a warlord titan without power armor. Now, to be fair, this did break every single bone in his body, but he was still able to overpower a 100-ton machine. And on top of that, it wasn't just his physical power that was the best, because in terms of sheer brute strength, he was definitely the 3rd strongest primarch in terms of just pure raw strength. But he was also incredibly fast, agile, and durable, and had nearly limitless stamina. And despite the fact that the Butcher's Nails made him feel nothing but rage and anger, he was still one of the best primarch duelists. In fact, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Lionel Johnson. Now, to be fair, this was Demon Prince Angwan, but if you actually look at many of Angwan's feats, Demon Prince Angwan is actually a side grade from normal Angwan. So Demon Prince Angwan was able to go toe-to-toe with the Lion and Sanguinius. Although he did lose both fights, it was still incredibly close. Both primarchs only beat him due to his limitless rage. Imagine if Mike Tyson had no technique and only had rage. He wouldn't get too far. It's the same with Angwan. So, although he lacks the skill and technique, he still has the power. Also, one thing to note is before the Butcher's Nails were added, he was incredibly psychically gifted. In fact, it's possible he would have been a battle psycho. Someone who used his psychic abilities to improve his combat, but we'll never see his true potential because they thought it'd be funny to shove a bunch of wiles in his brain and make him fight in gladiatorial pits. Also, he could absorb the mental and physical pain from those around him, and he was one of the kindest primarchs. And now he's just a rage monster. Also, although I didn't list off any primarch fight W's, he did win a fight against Lehman Russ. Now, this fight is very debatable. A lot of people say he did win. A lot of people say he didn't win. Me, personally, though, how I interpreted the book, he did win. But if you want to interpret it for yourself, please read his novel. Also, during the Drop Site Massacre, Corvus Corax was leading his sons away from the massacre, but the second he saw Angwan with dual axes screaming towards him, he pretty much said, "Yeah, we're cooked." But luckily, he was able to sneak away. And Corvus even said the only primarchs who would stand a chance against Angwan is Sanguinius and maybe Horus. Also, he did beat Gilliman in a fight, but he's kind of an old emoji. Next up on our list, and the 4th most powerful primarch, is actually Mortarion. Now, this guy is possibly even more nerfed than Angwan. Although Angwan could have been psychic, objectively his main power would be his physical power. But Mortarion was actually one of the strongest primarch psychos. In fact, he was second only to Magnus the Red. But due to his life on Barbarous, where the overlords of his planet were psychic aliens, his upbringing basically made him super racist against psychos and aliens. And so he's hyper suppressed his psychic powers. Now, this was a massive nerf. Because being able to impale someone with your scythe is good and all, but being able to impale someone with your scythe while shooting them with psychic lightning, would also be really good. In fact, later on during the Horus Heresy, he was attacked by a demon and he accidentally just used lightning to banish it. Now, given the fact that he overpowered a Greater Demon on accident with his psycho powers, that just goes to show how much of a beast this guy would have been if it wasn't for the fact that he was racist against psychos. If he ever actually developed his psycho powers, there's no doubt he would actually be higher on this list, same as Angron. In fact, both Angron and Mortarion got really nerfed. Angron got nerfed by the slave owners of New Syria, and Mortarion got nerfed by himself. Even without his psycho powers, he was still able to go toe-to-toe with Jagakai Khan, one of the best Primarch duelists. Although he did lose, but keep in mind, it was a very close fight. Both men could have won, and so if Mortarion had psycho powers, yeah, he would have bodied Jagakai Khan. Also, I like to imagine that Mortarion's whole thing is pretty much being the Grim Reaper. I like to imagine that if he actually uses psychic powers, he could have used his psychic powers to, like, form giant black wings and, you know, just pretty much embody the Grim Reaper. Also, one thing to note is, obviously, Mortarion was incredibly tanky and could take a massive hit and could just tank so much poison, so much everything, way more radiation, way more everything than any of the other Primarchs who were already super tanky and super resistant to these things. But one of his underrated abilities is actually his stealth. In fact, he's debatably the fourth most stealthy Primarch. I believe his psycho powers would have made him much physically stronger being a battle psycho, but a battle psycho can not only use psychic powers, but can also use his powers to buff himself. So he would have been stronger, faster, and able to use fire, ice, lightning, everything. And would have been able to use psychic powers to make himself a giant, pretty much make himself the embodiment of death. Now keep in mind, that's just my headcanon, that if Mortarion uses psychic powers to its fullest and actually, like, develop them, he pretty much would have become the embodiment of death, possibly the best Primarch duelist, but that's just all speculation. Moving up to the third strongest Primarch, Horus Lubercal. Horus Lubercal's Primarch aura was one of the strongest. It was so strong that Space Marines of other legions would be compelled to kneel before him. On top of this, he was also very charismatic, but that's not too important to his power. He was one of the physically strongest Primarchs, one of the biggest, one of the most tanky, one of the best at combat, and had some of the most raw power. He was one of the best Primarch duelists, not because of his skill, but because of his raw power and brute strength. Now, Horus and the Lion are very similar, but this is one part of them where they strongly are complete opposites against each other. The Lion isn't very powerful, but due to how ungodly good his technique is, he's one of the best Primarch duelists. Horus's technique sucks compared to his brothers, but because of his sheer raw power, it puts him at one of the best duelists. Now, obviously, including chaos buffs, Horus would be number one by far, but I'm trying to use their pre-chaos cocaine forms. That's why I didn't mind using Angron's Demon Prince feats too much, because normal Angron and Demon Prince Angron are actually pretty similar. Demon Prince Angron is more of a side grade, like Chaos Juiced Angron's more of a side grade, while Chaos Juice Horus in terms of power is a straight upgrade. If I remember rightly, Horus didn't really have any Primarch fights before he went on the Chaos Cocaine, but it is pretty much said that he was one of the strongest Primarchs by the Chaos Gods. And on top of that, Sanguinius, debatably the best Primarch duelists, wasn't 100% sure he could beat not Chaos Corrupted Horus. So, not Chaos Corrupted Horus could keep up with all the heavyweight Primarchs. Moving up to the second strongest Primarch on this list, Sanguinius. Sanguinius of the Blood Angels is the second strongest Primarch, and this is partially due to the Primarch demigod warp theory. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm sorry I'm going on a side tangent, but you're gonna listen. Not only are Primarch bodies incredibly engineered and really, really powerful, but that's not what makes them powerful. pretty much without their special sauce, they're pretty much just a space marine on steroids, a space marine on more steroids. Like, for example, there was a Primarch clone of Horus that got his ass kicked by Abaddon the Despoiler. If normal Horus fought Abaddon the Despoiler, even though Abaddon was on a lot of chaos cocaine, Abaddon would have gotten bodied. So you can also see with all sorts of Primarch clones that without those special sauce, they really suck. They're still much better than normal Space Marines or even Custodes, but compared to a real Primarch, they're nothing. And the reason this is because it's heavily implied in the story, not confirmed, but heavily implied, that the Emperor went to Malek, which was a planet where there was a portal that essentially connected the Immaterium to our galaxy. And the Emperor traveled there and wrangled up 20 demigods of the warp and put them in these Primarch bodies. Now, it's heavily implied that the Emperor wrangled up all the Primarch souls from the warp. And, you know, that's why you have someone like Polturabo who really sucks at combat, but can literally just look at machinery and be like, oh, yes, I can advance this by 100 years in a day. Or you can have someone like, you know, Horus who unfathomably powerful, unfathomably, you know, good at combat. This is why all the Primarchs are so versatile. Because if the Emperor could just have 20 of one Primarch, why wouldn't he just make 20 Dawns or 20 Gillimans or 20 Lions? Or, you know, like a balance of the three. This is because all of their souls are wildly different and hard to control. And that's why all of the Primarchs are wildly different. Now, it's heavily implied that Sanguinius has 2 demigod souls inside of him. And that's part of the reason why he's so ungodly powerful. Pretty much an angel of nobility and an angel of blood and destruction. Now, Sanguinius is so ungodly powerful. Again, not a single one of the Primarchs thought they could beat this guy. Some of the most arrogant Primarchs who thought they could beat everyone would be like, nah, I don't think I can beat that guy. One of his best abilities was the fact that he could see into the future and use it for combat, knowing where your sword is going to swing before you even know where it's going to swing. But that doesn't really go into his raw power. That's more technique. Well, I mean, it's not exactly a technique you can learn, but you get what I'm saying. One of his best feats was holding the Eternity Gate on Terra during the Horus Heresy. Well, this man had a psychic vision, well, oh yes, Horus will kill me, so nothing else can kill me. So he pretty much went cowabunga and charged all of the traitor forces at once. He killed over a dozen warlord titans. He killed emperor-class titans. He killed thousands of chaos space marines. He killed terminators, dreadnoughts. He fought Demon Prince Angron and won. This guy was so ungodly powerful. He killed millions of demons that were flooding into Terra. And keep in mind, this was all at the same time. He was on the same day. He destroyed dozens of titans, thousands of chaos space marines, millions of demons, defeated Angron. And after all of this, you think he's pretty tired. You think he's done. He went to fight Horus. And Horus turned off all of his chaos cocaine powers and fought this man in a fair 1v1. But it wasn't fair because Horus was perfectly well rested and ready for the fight, while Sanguinius just got done fighting for days without rest, food, or water. So this man went days without rest, food, or water while constantly slaying demons and titans and Angron, and then fought Horus and won. Horus had to turn back on his chaos powers in order to defeat this man. Keep in mind, Horus with his chaos powers is more powerful than the Emperor, and that's what it took to bring this man down. In fact, it's even said in the lore that all of the Chaos Gods wanted Sanguinius to be their champion instead of Horus, and that Horus and Sanguinius were the 2 most powerful Primarchs. Now, you might just be wondering, if these 2 are the most powerful Primarchs, why is Horus at 3rd and Sanguinius at 2? That's because I am confident enough to say that I outright disagree with what the writers said, due to feats and power scaling. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm such a nerd, but they say he's the most powerful primarch, and he's so powerful. For the longest time, I believed he was. But then I started to read up about Magnus. Now, in case you're wondering, Magnus is the most powerful primarch. And to be honest, you can actually make the debate that he is the most powerful primarch, or you can make a debate that he's not even in the top 10. And that's based off if you go through his top feats or greatest losses. And for this video, we're going to be going through his top feats, because some writers will absolutely rank this guy, and some writers will bully this node. One of his best feats is a giant ship that was 2 miles long, solid steel, was about to crash on a city, killing many Iron Warriors, many thousand suns, the entire city, of course, its entire population, and all of the mysteries of the city on how it survived all night unharmed, and not to mention possibly Poltawabo. And Magnus, seeing this, pretty much did a very rational thing. Well, he pretty much went Super Saiyan. His entire body began glowing with rainbow-colored light, began glowing with golden light and white light, essentially flew into the sky, and was able to vaporize the 2-mile-long ship with just his psycho powers alone. And this was a weakened Magnus, because literally minutes before this, he was being dumb and he took a tank shell directly to his chest, which left him wounded and weakened. So a weakened Magnus essentially was able to clap his hands and disintegrate a ship that was 2 miles long. And on top of that, he was debatably as powerful of a psycho as the Emperor. Now, don't get me wrong, unlike the Emperor, Magnus wasn't very physically strong, wasn't very fast, wasn't very durable, but in terms of just sheer psychic power and psychic power alone, he was on par with the Emperor of mankind. And one of his other greatest feats is his fight with Vulcan, which he unfortunately lost, but this man fought Vulcan again and again and again, winning every single time. He used a mega death spell that turned all of Vulcan's atoms, cells, and DNA strands into liquid, but Vulcan, being a perpetual, just kept regenerating. If you kill a man 100 times, but he regenerates 100 times, and on the 101st time, he's able to defeat you once, I'm pretty sure, even though you did technically lose, I'm pretty sure you won that fight. Vulcan being one of the better duelists and the physically strongest Primarch. And keep in mind, this was in a weakened state. Demon Prince Magnus is significantly weaker than normal Magnus. And this is because his shards were all whipped into pieces. And the Thousand Sons had to collect all of his shards. But while the shards were being collected, they were losing power. And they were only able to gather up like half the shards. And the half the shards they were able to gather up were already lost a significant amount of power. So Demon Prince Magnus would definitely be unable to do that, vaporizing that huge ship feat. And still, Demon Prince Magnus killed Vulcan again and again and again. Also, he did lose a fight with Gilliman, but he was being nerfed by the Sisters of Silence, and not to mention this was Demon Prince Magnus, who's heavily nerfed. Because the Emperor thought it was a good idea to find the point of his... When he was shadowed by Lehman, which I'll get into that in a moment, I probably should have covered that earlier, but who cares? His shards were broken in different pieces, but, different aspects had different parts. The parts that the Thousand Sons were able to collect were all kind of the a-hole parts. Arrogance, pride, envy, hatred, bitterness, all that stuff. But his nobility, kindness, and all that stuff, they thought it'd be funny to give that to some Grey Knights. So, yeah, all of his kindness and half his power was pretty much ripped away from him by the Emperor. And speaking of, his fight with Leman Russ. Now, although he did lose this fight, first of all, Leman Russ is the Primarch who is an anti-psycho. He has a massive wall attack that essentially nerfs or kills all psychics in a 1 mile area. So already in terms of matchups, one of the worst matchups for the Psychic Primarch. And on top of this, he was being nerfed by hundreds of Sisters of Silence. Sisters of Silence are blanks, which essentially their near presence limits psychic power, making Magnus weaker. And on top of all this, Leman Russ was wearing anti-psychic armor. So Magnus shoots a fireball. That fireball is only at like half power because it's Sisters of Silence. And it's being a little trimmed off the top because it's against Leman and he's anti-psychic. And even when it hits him, it's mostly being absorbed by Leman's anti-psychic armor. And on top of all of this, they were in melee. Magnus is not a melee fighter, and these two fought in a melee. And despite the fact that Magnus was getting ganged up on and had every disadvantage for him, despite the fact that Leman had every advantage he could have, Leman still got beaten badly by Magnus and had one of his 2 hearts crushed by the Crimson King. If the two fought on equal terms, even if Leman had his anti-psycho armor and all of his anti-psycho gear, if it was still a fair fight not in melee and without the sisters there weakening Magnus, Magnus would have won. Heck, even if the sisters were there weakening Magnus, but the two weren't in a melee, which is Leman Russ's strong suit and Magnus's weakest side, he still would have won if it wasn't for the sisters draining his power. Leman being one of the best Primarch duelists. So yeah, I just hope that the reason why both of his Primarch duels he was being nerfed by the Sisters of Silence is because there was not a single Primarch who could beat this man without the Sisters of Silence nerfing him. The only one who would stand a chance is Sanguinius. And even then, that's iffy. If Sanguinius can get in the melee and whip that man apart real quick, he has a chance. But, again, there's that spell that Magnus can do where he literally just turns you in the liquid. And unless you're Vulcan, you're not coming through that. Okay, I guess Vulcan did technically... Okay, even if Magnus wasn't being nerfed by being a Demon Prince, by having most of his power whipped away from him, because yes, he was slightly buffed by Tzeentch, but when you give someone a 10% power boost when they've lost half their power, you're still underpowered. And even if Magnus had fought Vulcan at his full power, obviously he still would have lost because Vulcan can just keep blowing him down, but by that logic, no one can beat Vulcan, so Vulcan's perpetual stash is kind of cheating. Okay, I hope that I have presented a competent list and had explained it in a good way. Now, do keep in mind, raw power and skill and your ability at actual fighting are 2 completely different things. Take a bodybuilder and put him against Bruce Lee, and you will understand that. But this was a raw power video. If you want a Primarch Duelist video, please ask me in the comments below. Also, please leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Did I make a good list? I hope I explained my list well. If you disagree with me, please leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the list, and I will see you in the next one. Also, please like and subscribe so that way we can surpass EDP in subscribers.